I got this message on Messenger from my brother-in-law, ex-brother-in-law, uh, who happens to be a Trump supporter and a Republican. So I took the time to I want to take the time to respond to him and others like him who always want to tell me how great the Republican Party is for black people and what they've done. Uh, the title of his message was "Let's be real, honest. Let's be real." So I figured my title would be "Let's be real, honest." Uh, the Republican Party today is not the Republican Party of Lincoln or of my grandfather, who was a Republican. Uh, Before Lincoln, there was a party in this country called the Democrat Republican Party. And many of our former presidents, like Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, John Quincy Adams, they were all Democrat Republicans. Uh, Members of this and several other parties who were against allowing slavery in the new territories broke away and formed the new Republican Party. Uh, they weren't trying to abolish slavery in the South when that party was formed. They just didn't want it to expand to the West. And Lincoln was the first president who happened to be a Republican, not a Democrat Republican. And after Lincoln's death, uh, his vice president didn't stick to Lincoln's policies. He was really uh, one who wanted slavery to continue. Uh, but thankfully, at that time, there were a bunch of radicals in Congress who happened to be Republicans of Lincoln's vein, and they were the ones who basically passed legislation that would protect rights of blacks, which drove Southern whites to the Democratic Party. And those whites who joined the Democratic Party were there for many generations. We used to call them Dixiecrats. Uh, yes, the Emancipation Proclamation did quote unquote free the slaves, but the 13th Amendment was and still is to this day a legal way for people to put other people, especially people of color, back into bondage. Okay, the 13th Amendment reads, "Neither slavery nor servitude, except as a punishment for crimes." And man, did they come up with all kinds of crazy crimes to keep black folks in servitude. The birth of the modern day criminal justice system. Now, they also talk about the 14th Amendment, and the 14th Amendment reads, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States." This amendment gave former slaves born here full rights under the Constitution. Now, the 15th Amendment, which we also have to talk about, reads, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous servitude." Women were still not allowed to vote, and black people were subject to poll taxes, literacy tests, counting the number of jelly beans in a jar, etc. They are still trying to suppress our vote even today, as we know, with some of the recent legislation in states like Georgia, Pennsylvania, whole bunch. There's about 43 states that are run by these Republicans that are trying to suppress our vote even today after the 2020 election. Curious to me that after the ratification of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, all Republican presidents after Lincoln, which included Grant, Hayes, Garfield, President Arthur, Harrison, McKinley, Teddy Roosevelt, President Taft, Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover, bunch of Republicans. Other than Teddy Roosevelt, I never heard of anything done by a Republican president along the lines of Lincoln, not until Dwight Eisenhower was elected in 1952. Did we have a Republican president who did something to end Jim Crow tactics. Uh, though the Republican Party did not really support the radical thinking of Lincoln, he did keep the Union together, and because of Lincoln, when slaves were freed, they supported the Republican Party. Yes, they were even able to get elected to Congress as Republicans. The Democratic Party was full of overt racism. Uh, Members of the Democratic Party started the Ku Klux Klan and other racist organizations. We know this. The Democrats fought civil rights reforms all the way to the 1960s in a lot of cases. Uh, FDR being a start to the exception, uh, he being a New York Democrat, uh, he wasn't a Southern Democrat. He actually was the start of a big difference in the Democratic Party, how they treated black folks and some of the measures they took to make sure that the lives of black folks were a bit different than they had been throughout the Reconstruction period and the Jim Crow period. Uh, though the Republican Party did not really support the radical thinking of Lincoln, as I said, during Reconstruction, the Republican Party became increasingly associated with big business and financial interests in the more industrialized North. As white resistance grew to Reconstruction, as white resistance grew, Reconstruction grew. Republicans focused less on the plight of black Americans and more on making money, allowing Southern state legislators to wipe out most of the changes of Reconstruction that were put into place by those Republicans in the Democratic Party in Congress. Uh, it was during the Depression era and FDR when blacks started to vote Democratic. After World War II, many white Southerners began migrating to the Republican Party due to the opposition to big government, expanding labor unions, and the Democratic Party's support for civil rights. Republicans also opposed freedom of choice and other cultural issues. Uh, some things have not changed. Republicans are currently trying to suppress the votes of black and brown people, and we know what they're doing with women's rights and trying to suppress their rights to have dominion over their own bodies. With big lies about stolen elections and so forth, you know, uh, the Republican Party of today, like I say, is not the Republican Party of Lincoln. So you can stop telling that lie and just deal with who you are. You know, I don't understand why the Republican Party does not try to um, speak to the issues, the plights of people in this country. It's always about, calling people names or trying to turn one group against another group, or trying to suppress one group from voting, you know. It's never on, well, I think we should do something this way and you should do something that way. Let's take a vote on it. What happened to debating and voting? That's all gone with the Republican Party, So that's all I got.